Hey, I am finally on. Sorry for the delay. I had an issue. I had to get a contract finalized and we were under some deadlines. I sat this morning and made a whole bunch of notes. I'm going to tag a few people in here, so just be patient. I did a post. I'm going to hold the phone so it doesn't shake. And I have pages and pages of notes here. I'm going to try to share with you on an educational basis. It has a lot to do with just the relevant political atmosphere, as well as just that relationship to what we're dealing with in child welfare and social welfare. So I'm going to tag a few of you. If you all could just pass them around and maybe tag a few more people, that would be great. Okay, got one more to go here. This always gets a few people online quicker, especially when I run late or something. So y'all can just jump on, and if not, of course you can always watch it after the fact. Okay, I am sitting outside on this beautiful June the 14th day. However, it is threatening to rain, so let's see how far we get. Okay, a couple more, and got a few active now, so I'll get them tagged in. And I am ready to go. Again, it pops up whatever pops up, so Facebook decides who I get a tag rapidly and who I don't. So if you all would just pass that around to some people, that would be great. And hello and everybody, and thank you for joining so far, and just go ahead and pass it around. Okay, so here we are. I want to talk to you about, I've made pages and notes here, okay? A lot of times I come on and I just talk to you about what's on my head or something current that has an issue that has raised, but I wanted to be very specific and give you lots of information today. So listen, so I want to talk to you about Family Forward Project and Family Forward Foundation. Family Forward Project was put together through Facebook about 2014. We've just, we thought we would get a whole lot more done before 2020, and we just constantly run into roadblocks with legislatures, judges, federal, et cetera, et cetera. So we're still there. We're still growing. There's lots of other groups on Facebook that have to do with child welfare reform. The Family Forward Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit, and it is, I'm really kind of just had that there to run a few small projects on, a few small things that we've done, raised just a little bit of money, have not really pushed it as an organization because, as you all know, I'm a full-time attorney, so I have very limited time that I can do that. But it has continued to just congeal in my mind as to what we need to do. So as we move forward, we are going to be looking that you think of Family Forward Foundation as a donation source in different ways. Okay, so if you use Amazon, you can go to Amazon Smile. If you through Facebook, if you want to do a little fundraiser for your birthday or something, then you can go ahead. Family Forward Foundation is already set up both in Amazon Smile and in Facebook. So just make sure that on Amazon Smile you pick the Brentwood, Tennessee, or the Tennessee Family Forward Foundation, because there's an organization that's a little bit different that is up in like the Northeast somewhere. Today I want to talk about sort of the political place of where we are and how it really relates to what we are doing. So for those of you who know me through my personal page, you know that personally I'm conservative. And to me, being personally conservative means a few things, okay? It's very specific. It means smaller government, opportunities for individuals, free market competition, and protecting liberty and life. That to me is a conservative. Okay, what it does not mean is Koch brothers agenda, which is the extreme right wing, which basically means that there should be no environmental regulations, which allows them to poison with toxic industrial chemical waste. And in particularly poor Arkansas has just been flooded with Koch brothers waste. It does not mean police state control and brutality. And it does not mean that rape victims have no rights. So just very clear is what conservatism means to me. So I know personally I think both parties, both of the two main parties in the United States, have some problems, and our biggest problem is that we have people who've been in politics for too long. So I'm not going to really go into that today. I really want to educate you more on just the scenario of where we are. So those who followed me for a while, you know that I am a warrior, and we have some thunder in the background here that just goes along with that perfectly. I have appeared in different states with different groups, state legislators. I've been arrested for defending a parent against an unlawful order, and I speak out both in the positions that I take for parents in legal proceedings, as well as attacking things through the civil rights, etc. This current political place where we are is this issue of defunding the police, and I know I was watching today, they were talking about that as what the proponents of the defunding of police state that they want a social worker model or a social work model. So when I heard that, because I've been watching what's going on, I haven't really made very many comments about it, but when I saw that they wanted a social work model, I just thought I just wanted to talk generally to the world, and I hope you share this, about what a social work model looks like, right? And what the status of our federal law is. So there's a belief that this social work model would be better, but there are no successful social work models. Okay, so communism and socialism, they have huge dependent nanny government states where they have a lot more services in place, but they aren't successful either. And I could tell you stories about Norway and United Kingdom and Australia and Canada, but I'm really going to stick to where we are and the status of our law. So here's how a social work model kind of works. So in Tennessee, let me just talk about nationwide in the United States. We have what's called Child Protective Services. And Child Protective Services appears in it's a state agency, so in every state they call it something a little bit different. It is, in Tennessee, it's Department of Children's Services. There's other Department of Children and Families. I mean, there's different names across the United States. But basically, they're called Child Protective Services, and that's kind of the common denominator. And most of the times I talk about it today, I will talk about Child Protective Services. Now, DCS, I may mention DCS, and again, that's the Tennessee model, and that's the status of Tennessee child welfare law. In Tennessee, the Department of Children's Services sprang out of the Department of Human Services in about 1995. Now, interesting, because I'm going to talk about oversight, consequences, and accountability. In 1995, when they created this agency, the legislature created it, and they also created an oversight committee. And that oversight committee was supposed to have 4 people appointed by the governor, 4 people appointed by the Speaker of the House, and 4 people appointed by the Lieutenant Governor, who is basically the Senate Majority Leader. And they never created it. Okay, it never created. Now, nobody knew that they didn't create it because nobody raised the issue until I raised the issue in 2011. And I went to a chancery court and asked the chancellor to issue a mandamus against the governor, the Speaker of the House, and the Lieutenant Governor to form this oversight committee. Well, within 2 weeks, the chancellor said she wasn't going to do it, and within 2 weeks, they abolished the legislation. So that was 2011. Now, that means, and I actually did my research before I did that, so in 1995, they created the agency along with the Oversight Committee. By 2011, which is 15 years later, they had not created the Oversight Committee and they abolished it. So no oversight, no accountability from the legislative standpoint. Now that would have included both the legislative and executive branches to have oversight, because the governor was to appoint 4 people, the Senate was to appoint 4 people, and the House was to appoint 4 people. It's getting really windy here. Hope that's not disturbing our sound. If there's too much noise background, let me know. I'm still outside. It's getting windy, so I don't know if that's going to interrupt our sound. So let's move on. Now, the Department of Children's Services has a commissioner, And that commissioner covers different things. One is juvenile justice, child protective services, foster care, family services. It sort of covers this gamut, which includes both kind of a criminal aspect of it under juvenile justice, which is children who are delinquent, as well as the foster care, which is the CPS side of it. The referrals, okay, referrals, this is a must know. Everybody must know this. Referrals to the hotline are allowed to be anonymous, and they are mandatory by everybody now, not just doctors and teachers, but it is mandatory. And if there is a referral, it must be investigated. Okay, that's a requirement. It must be investigated. Now, as I tell you these things, I want you to imagine, if you will, that we did not have a police department and we had a social work model in our entire society, not just child welfare, but our entire society. So undoubtedly, there would be a referral hotline where people could make anonymous referrals, which now, if somebody's going to complain of a crime, you have to do a police report. You have to identify yourself in the police report. And if you make a false report, you can be charged criminally with filing a false police report. But no such thing under the social work model, okay? Because it's just there to help. We're just there to help, right? So they get these anonymous referrals and they're required to investigate. So what do? They go to school. They take your kids out of class. You don't get any notice. Nobody calls you and tells you that your kids are being taken out of class, which is still a question as to whether or not that is, and Trish, the ombudsman basically does nothing. I've already tried that. That is supposed to be an office to get fair treatment. And yet, if they think that the ombudsman is supporting parents, they will kick them off the case. So just so you know. So back to investigations. So they go to school, no notice, take your kids out of class, don't have to audio tape them, don't have to videotape them, don't have to inform the children that they could be removed from their families. Nope. So again, under the social work model, that's how it works. Or the other thing is they come and they knock on your door, right? And you answer the door and it's somebody there who appears to be a plainclothes person. Excuse me, and they ask to come in your house, that they want to talk to you. There's no Miranda warning. Okay, what are the Miranda warnings? The Miranda warnings are that you have a right against self-incrimination, you're entitled to an attorney, that you don't have to talk if you don't want to. So under the social work model, there is no Miranda warning. Okay, I want to make sure you understand that. No Miranda warning, no Fifth Amendment privilege. The federal courts have clearly said that there's no Fifth Amendment privilege in a civil matter. Questionable. There is one case out there that says that applies. But so you have no Fifth Amendment privilege. You have no confidentiality. So, of course, with the police, you have no confidentiality either if you talk to the police. But most people go like, I'm not sure I want to talk to the police, right? So if you tell the social worker what your problems are, let's say there's domestic violence, let's say there's addiction within your household, there is no confidentiality. And under the social work model, they can testify against you. Okay, they're not your friend. They can testify against you. No attorney. They don't advise you that you should have an attorney present, that anything might be used against you. They might take your children. They might take some of your freedoms or your rights, etc. This is the social work model, y'all. And they will ask you to be drug tested, a UA, which is the most unreliable drug test there is, a urine analysis. It requires all kinds of controls, which they do not provide, and they do not save the specimen. So if they tell you, if you agree to do a urine analysis right there, and you get a positive for meth or amphetamine, they don't tell you that you have a right to have that test sample retested, and they don't tell you about what false positives could be causing that positive. So a lot of times they don't even tell you that they are characterized as an investigator. They are not a social worker, they are an investigator. So this is a social work model, folks, just so you understand. Now, if you don't cooperate with them, then under the law in Tennessee and in many other states, they can go to court ex parte. And for all of you who don't know what ex parte means, it means behind your back. Okay, they don't have to tell you. They go to court, and ex parte, they can get an order from a judge that officially requires you to open the door and allow them in your home, requires you to let them talk to your children, and even ask you certain questions. So this is called an investigative order, and our legislature passed this investigative order, okay? So this is where we are. This is what a social work model looks like. You don't, so let's talk about an investigative order versus a search warrant. Okay, for a search warrant, an officer has to have credible evidence of probable cause and tell the court specifically what they're looking for. So if they want to do a search warrant in your home for drugs, they have to put together an affidavit that says we need to do a search for cocaine or meth or some other illegal substance or child porn, whatever. But they have to have some facts to support as to why they would do it. And then once they remove anything from your home, they have to provide you a very specific list of what they have obtained, and they have to provide that to the court. Not so in the social work model. In the social work model, they can get an investigative order, they can talk to your children, they can go in your house, and they can write down you got a dirty kitchen, your bathtub wasn't clean, you had mold on your shower curtain, okay? All things that rise to environmental neglect in their eyes. Are you hanging in there? Okay, let's move on. So now they can go to court and they can get an ex parte order to take your kids. Okay, they take your kids if you don't cooperate. Just if you don't cooperate them. And they may not have any basis for the allegations in the petition, but if you don't do what they want you to do, then they will still take your kids anyway. This is a social work model for you guys, okay? So and if you think this won't be applied across the board, then you're clueless, okay? Y'all are clueless, okay? This is the social work model. So they can get an ex parte order, they can lie, they can fail to disclose exculpatory evidence, and there's no consequence. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit more as we go along about civil rights and what your civil rights are in civil rights litigation. So the courts have determined that a police officer cannot go and get a warrant to arrest you on false information. That is a violation of your Fourth Amendment. And they cannot withhold exculpatory information or maliciously prosecute you if they've withheld information that it shows that you're innocent or that the charges are not founded. All right, so, but a social work model, nope, they can withhold, they can lie, they cannot even confirm the source. They're not even required to confirm the source. This is the social work model. Now, you're supposed to have, once they take your children, a 72-hour hearing, right? Which to determine whether or not your children should be to determine whether or not your children are at substantial risk of harm. Okay, so no 72-hour, no problem, no consequence, nobody's held accountable, no 72-hour hearing. And even if you do get a 72-hour hearing, then probable cause is allowable on hearsay. In other words, a caseworker can come in and say, well, I talked to the teacher and the teacher said that the children are dirty and late all the time, right? It can be on hearsay, and the court does not even have to make a finding of substantial risk of harm. The court merely has to make a finding that there's probable cause for the petition and there's no quote unquote least restrictive means, which is federal language, a federal cliche, which I may or may not be able to cover in this broadcast. All right, so let's compare that to criminal. If you get arrested for a felony, let's say it is a theft over $500, and you go to court and you have a preliminary hearing, and even if they've locked you up and put you in jail on it, then they cannot use hearsay. Hearsay is not admissible in criminal court. Not admissible. Do you get that? Do you see the big difference? Do you see the social work model versus the criminal model? Hearsay, okay? Finally, even if they find probable cause, they set bail on you. And that bail is conditioned on certain things, which is fine, which mainly is to protect the community. But not so. They just keep your children. So let's talk about then what happens after that. So you're not entitled to a jury trial in the social work model, okay? Of course, in criminal court, you're always entitled to a jury trial. It is often months away, even though under, I know in Tennessee law, if they remove your child, you're supposed to have a full evidentiary hearing within 30 days. And if they did not remove your child, within 90 days, but it can be months away. And there's no accountability and there's no consequences. So They can also withhold exculpatory evidence in a criminal case. The state has, if you request discovery from the state, they have to give it to you, including all exculpatory information, okay, which means information that would show that you're not guilty or that you're innocent of the crime, but not so in the social work model. This is the model, okay? So this you need to pass around so that these people who want to defund the police know what the social work model looks like, because that's what we deal with every day, those in the child welfare system. Then, in the social work model, they basically put you on probation before you have ever even been found guilty of anything, right? And so in criminal court, they have to have a trial on you. They have to find beyond a reasonable doubt that you are guilty before they can put you on probation and make you do something. Not true in the social work model. First of all, they've reduced the standard, which they call clear and convincing evidence, but which is supposed to be a firm conviction before they interfere with your constitutional rights, but it's never a clear and convincing standard because it's non-jury, it is a judge only, and it's whatever the judge thinks that day, okay? A concern, the children may be at risk of harm. And in some states, like Connecticut, they even have what's called predictive negligence, okay? So if we just assume that maybe in the future you could do something, then we can find that the children are abused and neglected because of predictive negligence. All right, moving on here. Thank y'all for listening. So in 2016, I spoke before the Indigent Task Force in Tennessee, and this is uploaded to YouTube. You might want to scroll back and find it because it's a very concise 10-minute statement about the inherent conflict of interest. And when you have an agency, when you look at the prosecution versus the services aspect of the agency. So there is no quality assessment of needs from the get-go, which is part of the problem. Now, people who want to defund the police say they want a social work model. Well, here's the problem. They will end up in exactly the same place that we are with child welfare, which has been in existence now for almost 60 years and is a miserable failure. All right? 500,000 kids are stuck in the foster care system at any given moment. Kids are killed by foster parents. Foster care model just simply does not work. So let's move to federal funding and privatization and how that affects the social work model that we're dealing with in child welfare. So you have Title IV-E and Title IV-B funds. 4E funds are foster care money, excuse me, and 4B funds are family service money. 4E